Ever dreamed of going to law school? Now you can. You don't even need to take the LSAT to get in.
I think it was back in 2014 now that law schools first started taking exams for admission other than the LSAT. The American Bar Association made some changes allowing schools to take up to 10% of their classes with valid exams other than the LSAT, which mainly opened the door for the GRE to rise as it recently has. So since then, it went from University of Arizona and a couple of other lower ranked law schools up to University of Michigan, starting to take some of its own undergrads for acceptance into law school while they were still in undergrad, getting that secured and out of the way. And then finally, recently, Harvard opened the door to allow pretty much any law school to take the GRE instead. Because of course, Harvard being the big brand name it is, being the leader that it is, if it does something, then all the other law schools will consider it to be okay and they'll follow suit. But law schools are doing this for their benefit, not yours. Law schools are getting their tuition dollars either way, no matter what. You're the one who's got to be able to pass the bar and go on to become a successful attorney. And the LSAT has a certain degree of reliability and validity proven that the GRE doesn't really have. A couple of years ago, when these changes first started happening, the Huffington Post had me on their live TV show to discuss what an LSAT optional policy could mean for students and what it means for law schools. So I'll play you a clip from that, and then we'll talk more about it.
Are we seeing the removal of LSATs? Is this just a way to get more students?
I would absolutely agree with that. I think that this is simply a reduction of standards to help no one really other than law schools themselves who need the tuition dollars to support their overhead. I don't think this is good for the profession. I don't think this is good for the applicants or future law students themselves. I think this is simply law schools justifying their need to reduce standards to open the door to get more tuition dollars in the end.
So the question remains, what does this change really mean for you? If you already have an LSAT score on file, that score will get reported to the American Bar Association, so law schools will care about that a great deal. They are ranked in the rankings, most importantly, on the applicant's highest submitted LSAT score. So if you took the LSAT, got an official score of, let's say, 150, 155, and you want to go to a top 14 school, and you say, you know what, well, I'll just take the GRE instead and see if I can do better on that. Well, first of all, you probably can do better on that because it's an easier exam, and the pool of test takers for the GRE is not as rigorous or competitive as that for the LSAT. But law schools will consider your 155 or 150 score. They'll have to submit that to the American Bar Association. That's what will count for the rankings. And so even if you got a perfect GRE score, the fact that you have a score in the low 150s will hurt your application. If you haven't taken either exam yet, yeah, maybe you could get in with the GRE if you are truly a math or science wizard and law schools really want you. But most likely, they're not taking that many people with GRE scores anyway. I'm guessing, if anything, they might reserve that for legacies or for the sons and daughters of famous people who they really want to take to their school, but they don't want those people to hurt their rankings. It's not really meant for people who just don't want to deal with the LSAT and don't want to deal with logic games. And they're probably right, because the LSAT is the only test that, in my estimation, is a valid and reliable predictor of first-year law school grades. I don't believe that has been demonstrated to the same extent with the GRE. What Harvard Law did is they took people who were already current students, had gotten top scores on both the LSAT and GRE, and said that, you know what, these people, their GRE scores showed that they would do well in law school, but the thing is, these people are at Harvard. They're going to do well no matter what, just because they're really bright people. But law schools on the lower end, taking people who can't break 150 on the LSAT by saying, you know what, just take the GRE instead, it's fine. Those schools are just hungry for tuition dollars, and they're not doing their students any service if those students cannot later pass the bar after having dropped hundreds of thousands of dollars in law school tuition and then living expenses and opportunity cost. So don't apply with the GRE unless you are a really special case. For most people, the LSAT is the game. It's the only game in town. It's the only one that matters. And if you can't cut it on the LSAT, you might have a lot of trouble in law school, and that's a big gamble. It's a big risk. You don't want to take on that debt. You'll be paying it off the rest of your life. So really be careful. Just do your best. Rock the LSAT. There are about 100 old released exams available at the moment. Several dozen of them are numbered, but there are a handful that are unnumbered. I'll link to those below. I'll link to some further thoughts on the LSAT versus the GRE below as well. If you'd like to find out more, if you have any questions about applying to law school, taking the LSAT, please feel free to reach out. I love hearing from students, and in the meantime, I'll wish you all the best. Take care.